All right, thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today with Mark Lawrence of Covers.com for this Friday, the 25th of October, 2019, on the Our Football Radio Network at ourlads.com, the king of online football depth charts and college football scouting. This program is brought to you in part by Covers.com, the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. All right, Mark, so week 8 in the NFL season, so we're right there about the midway point. Like the next week, 10 days is considered the midway point. We've got ourselves a trade deadline on Tuesday, and we've already had a few deals, and I think we're going to have a few more deals before Tuesday.
You know, it's a little bit interesting in the sense, if you mentioned, Greg, about trades, that in the past, they very rarely ever occurred during the season. There was almost always the off season for trades in the National Football League, and we're seeing more and more of them these days, especially this year. So they're kind of maybe getting into the baseball world of wheeling and dealing, and fans love trades.
Yes.
And the guys that are in the playoff race or appear to be the guys to catch are going out and landing some key players, especially wide receivers. So we'll see exactly how this all shakes out between now and next week.
Yeah, I think it has. I think some of it also has to do with, in most part, a lot of GMs have realized contractually, especially with the non-guaranteed contracts, it makes it a lot easier to trade these players. And also, you've got the situation with moving the deadline a little bit further out. So it was ridiculous. They would have the trade deadline like 6 weeks into the season or 5 weeks into the season. And so they moved it out to the midway point, which makes a lot more sense and gives teams a little bit more of an opportunity to make deals so they're not screwed for 3/4 of the season.
Yeah, and basically a lot of teams that will be making trades will be doing what we would call rental deals, if you will, just like that we see in baseball, where they'll acquire players that will help them through their run to make the playoffs, and then maybe look past them after this year is over. But bottom line is they're all looking to help their roster.
All right, now, and by the way, no division games this week. That's as rare as it gets in the NFL. No division games. So that means not a lot of rivalry games this week. But we do have a blockbuster game without a blockbuster player, and that is the Packers and the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football, and no Patrick Mahomes. What a bad time for Patrick Mahomes to get hurt. And maybe this should signal something to coordinators and coaches around the league when it comes to quarterback sneaks, I guess. Is that really necessary when you've got a superstar, zillion-dollar quarterback? I just don't think so. I mean, figure out another way out to gain a half a yard or something like that. But you know what? Knowing Andy Reid, the first game Mahomes comes back, he'll go for a quarterback sneak. Now, you had the Chiefs as your top pick of the week. Was that before you knew that Patrick Mahomes was not going to play?
No, that was our top play of the week. Regardless, whether he plays or whether he doesn't play. For reason number one, I think Green Bay is a bit of a fraud. If you look at their statistics, they're nowhere near their record stat-wise. Number two, also, I love playing backup quarterbacks in their first start, rallying around the star missing athlete. These plays have been like gold of late here, especially this football season here, in Matt Moore, the quarterback that will be behind center for the Chiefs this week. He is 20-10 to the spread in his career in the 30 starts that he's made. So he's not at all shy to this particular situation here. I think they'll keep this very conservative. They will not let Matt Moore win or lose the football game. And I think the Green Bay Packers, off that perfect game that they threw, if that was a baseball game last week, Aaron Jones would have been Johnny Vandermeer throwing a perfect game. And I love betting against players, quarterbacks especially, that throw perfect passer rating games their very next game. That's called bouncing, and you generally tend to bounce on the road in that very next game. So you put that all together here, a lot of value to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, the Chiefs got to make sure they get Frank Clark and Chris Jones as healthy as possible. They've been banged up. They're their two star defenders going up against Aaron Rodgers. Not sure if Adams is going to be back and ready to go. As far as the receiving game for Green Bay, the Chiefs are a home dog for the first time since 2014. How about that? That's when they lost to Denver as a 1-point dog. And when they were a dog, which and I'm just talking, home, away, just a dog. They haven't been a dog since last year's Ram game, the 54-51 game, in which they were a 3.5-point dog and covered by a 0.5 point. They're 3-2 straight up, 5-0 against the spread, the last 5 as a dog. And the Chiefs, by the way, have a big game next week when they take on your Mike Zimmer Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, that will be a big football game, undoubtedly, possibly a Super Bowl preview. We never know. But the bottom line here is you won't catch Kansas City looking ahead past that game, especially with this being a prime time Sunday night football contest, and especially with Patrick Mahomes not being in the lineup here. This is, once again, I say, rally around the new guy, this football game here Sunday night. And I think Andy Reid's a master at doing just that. I think I'll have a game plan here that Green Bay might not be expecting.
Yeah, Reid, excellent. When you take a look at the difference between him and a dog or a favorite role, definitely this is the better role for him. And the talk about Kirk Cousins, because he's had a couple of good games over some average to below average teams. Mike Zimmer's one thing, Kirk Cousins is another. It is not time to start forgiving Kirk Cousins. I'm sorry. There's a lot more proof in my mind that needs to come from Kirk Cousins before I believe they become a true Super Bowl contender. There's a lot of teams battling it out for the playoff spot in those playoff spots in the NFC compared to the AFC. The AFC, boy, there's some bad teams out there in the AFC compared to the NFC.
Yeah, there are. You're talking about looking in the AFC North, where Baltimore looks to be the favorite, Cleveland right behind them. And in truth, in a good year, neither of those two teams would sniff the playoffs. And there's not a lot of top quality teams that are at the very top of the cream of the AFC this year. That's one of the reasons that New England is having their way this year and will likely have their way, perhaps maybe even making it back to the Super Bowl as a defending champion. One, because of the neighborhood they live, and two, because the AFC is down drastically this football season here. So it all works out well for the Chiefs this year. We'll need to see who out of the AFC is going to step up during the second half of the season and become a contender.
Yeah, the Patriots right now, it's still all about their defense. This has got to be Belichick's best defense, and it compares to his first Super Bowl defense, because that was his best defense. The Richard Seymours, the Teddy Bruschi's, and so forth. There were some really talented players defensively on that team. This one might be better. I mean, now the difference that we still don't know yet, though, regarding the defense or the team, is how good they are because of the schedule. And this is now we're going to slowly start to turn the corner in their schedule, where they're going to start playing, decent teams over the next couple of weeks. And then it starts to ramp up where they start playing some really good football teams. That's when we'll find out how good their defense is, how good they are in general. They're a 13-point home favorite against the Browns, who've got a bye while the Patriots come off the Monday night game. It's a 2-touchdown favorite. I can sit here and go, it's Kitchens against Belichick. That's the mismatch of the century. But that's just not really the way it goes. I only look at that in big games. This is not a big game. But it is, in a way, a big game for the Browns, because the Browns have got, even if they don't win this game, they got to get some sort of momentum going. They're already 2-4. I suspect that they're going to be able to hang in there a little bit more than maybe some people would think. 13's a big number. I just think the Browns, still talent-wise, very talented team. I think their defense, as long as Baker doesn't give the game away, I think their defense should be able to keep him in the game.
Well, I think you hit it right on the head when you mentioned about this Patriots defense, and I think there has to be an asterisk involved with that because of the strength of the schedule that they played. If you take Buffalo out of their scheduled opponents this year, the teams they beat are 4-21 combined this year. Not bad. Cleveland's not a whole lot better than that, okay? That needs to be said. But the bottom line here to me is I think there's a huge scheduling rest advantage for the Browns, as you say. A bye week, New England coming off of a Monday night football game. I think that'll work in Cleveland's favor in this contest here. And and I know, and the football world knows, that for the Cleveland Browns to win this game, the Patriots are going to have to play their worst game, and the Browns are going to have to play their best game. But that's not out of the realm of possibility here because there is a lot of talent on this Cleveland Browns roster. It just hasn't come together at this point here right now at this particular stage. And who's to say that they maybe don't get their act together off the bye week? I know they responded real well when they needed to, when they went into Baltimore and won that football game impressively. They need an impressive performance in this game here as well. If they don't win this game, I think they can at least go back to the dog pound with the money.
Yeah, they even though they had the bad San Francisco game, in general, they've been better on the road this year than they have been at home. So
yes.
All right, now you got to explain this one to me because Seattle, the line shot up from 3 to 6. Matt Ryan, we still don't know if he's going to play or not. You're taking the Falcons. Now, I'm surprised about that. So you're going to throw me some interesting stats, I'm sure, to explain yourself, young man. Because Seattle is 3-0 straight up ATS on the road this year. Atlanta has lost 5 straight up ATS. You know, I have been burying them every week, and they've been working for me every week because I keep betting against them and they keep losing. So that's working out for me. Now Matt Ryan may not even play, so and I'm sure you're going to throw in the backup quarterback deal as one of the reasons, because it looks like he probably won't play. So New's been traded. The offensive line is getting more banged up by the minute. The defense is getting more banged up by the minute. So let me have it.
Well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of this here, Greg. When we went to press with our newsletter in this game, it was not known whether Matt Ryan was playing or not. As we speak today, it's still not known whether Matt Ryan is playing or not. But when we went to press, the line was Seattle -3,
yes,
circled because of the uncertainty. And all we did was called Seattle by 3 in the newsletter and basically said, we're going to put this on ice and we'll wait and evaluate the situation.
Okay.
So since that happened, New England's gone up now to a 5 and 6 point favorite in the contest here. And that tells me that Vegas has a pretty good feel that Matt Ryan will not play in this contest here. You're not going to find me on the Atlanta Falcons in this game one way or another. I will say that. Largely because there's one thing that happens in this game that Seattle does and Atlanta can't do a thing about, and that's run the football. Seattle will pound the ball down their throat. The rushing attempts that they'll put up as opposed to the rushing attempts that Atlanta will put up will be disgusting. And when you control the ball on the ground and you don't allow the other team a chance to be on the field, it can be very, very ugly real quickly. Now you have Seattle also coming in here off of a home loss, which will get their attention in this game. And you also have Seattle coming in here with revenge. They lost to Atlanta the last time they played in 2017. So there's reasons for Seattle to come and play this game. I don't want any part of Atlanta this week. I think this will be the last time we will see Dan Quinn on the sidelines with Atlanta going to a bye week next week. We know that most of these firings usually occur, in-season firings occur during off weeks or bye weeks for football teams. And I'm going to say even money that Dan Quinn will be the second head coach to be given his walking papers come next week.
Okay. Keep an eye on that. But, yeah, I just love Seattle. Again, I've been hitting it with going against Atlanta now. It might be 5 straight weeks. So I'm going to – and Seattle's been playing better on the road. So, I love Seattle. And you know what? 6.5. I'd rather have 6 and no Matt Ryan than 3 and Matt Ryan. So, okay. Let's go with another big game, and we both agree on this one. Carolina and San Francisco. We both have Carolina in this game. The Niners are about a 5.5, 6-point favorite here. But still, the Niners are not the best favorite team. They're 2-15 ATS, last 17 is a favorite. 1-2 this year. They did beat Cleveland. That was the one. They get Sanders. Not sure he's going to play or not this week. They still got some key guys out on the offensive line. But for Carolina, that defense, maybe they're going to be able to expose the offensive line a little bit. And the San Francisco's offense and the offensive line definitely have something to do with it. They just haven't been able to get going. With Garoppolo is just not performing at the level that they'd like. Meanwhile, Kyle Allen, it's not like he's lighting up the scoreboard, but the fact is he's won every game, 4-0, straight up ATS. And Carolina's 12-5 in their last 17 as a road dog, including 2-0 straight up and against the spread this year. They're coming off the extended vacation in London. Maybe you've got some stats for me regarding teams coming back from London. But I'm going to go ahead and take Carolina plus the 6 and maybe even put Carolina in the money line at 2-1 to win the game.
I agree on both counts with this, Greg. The only concern I have here is San Francisco will be a lot like Seattle, and they will attend to rush the football down Carolina's throat because they're the number one team in the league in rushing attempts. The 49ers are, and that's led to a lot of their success thus far this football season. But the other points you make about Carolina coming back from London, we outlined in this week's Playbook newsletter about teams that return from London have a week of rest in a low scoring total, an over under total in this game. If the total is 44 or less, those teams are now 15-2 against the point spread. That's a big support for Carolina in this contest here. And I also like the fact that Carolina has dominated this football team since Carolina became a member of the National Football League. They played them 21 times. They've gone 17-4 against the spread, 9-1 in San Francisco. Undefeated San Francisco, I think, will begin to show signs and cracks of being undefeated, and the pressure eventually gets to teams like that, especially ones that haven't been there for a long while. And Kyle Allen, as you mentioned here, he is the Teddy Bridgewater for this football team this year. He's also 5-0 straight up into the spread in his career because he made one start last year and he won and covered that game. So it ain't broke, don't fix it for Carolina here. I'm with you. I'm on Carolina, and I do like them in a money line play as well.
Yeah, and that same thing could be said with the Saints. With Bridgewater and Breeze, we haven't heard anything yet about Breeze, but with the bye next week, I mean, why would you bring Breeze back now? I mean, Bridgewater's won all of his starts. It's not like Arizona is Green Bay or something. So this would make a lot of sense to play Bridgewater again. He hasn't lost straight up or against the spread. So they're a 10.5 point favorite in this one. Now, look, Arizona has surprised a lot of people. They've won 3 straight games, straight up ATS, all as dogs. They're dog here as well, but they beat Cincinnati, Atlanta, and the Giants. So this is a major step up in competition. They, by the way, will host San Francisco on Thursday Night Football next Thursday. Sometimes players will look ahead to big nationally televised games. That's something that I keep an eye on. But New Orleans right now is just too good. They're playing as good as any team in the NFL, and I think this is just too big of a major step up in talent for Arizona.
Well, as we said in our write-up in this football game, if you look at it, Greg, our vote would go to Sean Payton for Coach of the Year right now through the first half of the season. I think he would edge out Sean McDermott from Buffalo. They've both done terrific jobs thus far this season. Payton's done it under a little bit different circumstance, having lost his star quarterback, but still keeping not only the ship afloat, but dominating in the process, largely through the defense that they play in this game here. You've got Arizona on this little winning streak here right now, and I think all good things come to an end quickly for bad football teams, and we're going to probably find that to be the case in this particular game as well. The reason that they would entertain playing Drew Brees in this game is simple. If he's 100% healthy, their contention will be, why not? Let's get him ready for the second half of the season here. There's nothing to protect him from injury or risk. And the other part of it is Drew Brees himself just may want some playing time. Now, whether he starts the game and leaves early or comes in a mop-up duty just to get some playing time remains to be seen. But I don't think that's the factor or the matter of the fact in this game here. I think what is this New Orleans defense has got what it can take to shut down this Arizona Cardinal offense, which has suddenly come alive of late, if you will. But because Arizona has come alive of late, there might be a smidgen of value to New Orleans in the game. I'm going to pass the football game, but I'm not going to be surprised if New Orleans wins this contest comfortably.
Here's a playbook special. The Saints are 21-2 against the spread in their last 23 at home versus non-division opponents off a straight-up dog win. 21-2. That's pretty impressive.
That's real impressive. And you put that side by side with Teddy Bridgewater's 20-2 point spread record as a starter in this league in non-division games. There's a lot of ammunition for the Saints as we talk about.
All right. Oakland and Houston. And Houston is a 7-point favorite coming off the loss to the Colts. Here's an interesting contrast. if you take a look at how Houston and Oakland play versus respective divisions that their opponents are in, Oakland has covered 9 straight games on the road versus AFC South teams. And let's not forget, they upset the Colts just a couple of weeks ago on the road. Houston is 1-8 against the spread in the last 9 at home versus AFC West teams. So just that one alone says to take the Raiders. I don't know if I could do that, though. Houston, off a loss. They've got to win this game, and I think they've got to put themselves in a position as well to make sure there isn't a shot for Oakland to even steal a win, because they're 4-3, Houston. I mean, they're playing so well, we would think that they're 6-2, 5-2, whatever, but they're 4-3. So they got Jacksonville at home. They got Jacksonville, next week on the road. So yeah, I kind of got to go with Houston here. I'm still very impressed with what John Gruden's done with this team. And you have to keep in mind, too, that this is the final away game for Oakland on their 5-game trip over 2 continents. So far, 2-2 straight up and against the spread.
21,347. You know what that number is, Greg?
Miles?
That Oakland has played in this 5-game road trek. That's more miles than the Jets, the Bills, and the Giants combined will play this football season here, will travel. So, I mean, they're doing it all in this condensed 5-week period here. And you know that's going to eventually catch up to a football team here. You couple that with the fact that Houston's in an angry mood after losing what they perceive to be a big revenge win against the Colts last week. They lost not only a division game, but it was a playoff revenge game that they had and didn't get. So you're likely to see Houston coming up here, I think, with a very, very focused effort in this contest here. Then you got Bill O'Brien, who has always been pretty good in his career against teams off a double-digit loss. He's 10-0 straight up and 9-1 to the spread when favored in this particular role. I think all the numbers are in Houston's favor for all the right reasons.
All right, let's talk about a game that we disagree on. Not that I disagree on this too much, because I can never be 100% or anything close to that comfortable when I'm taking Tennessee. They're a 2.5-point favorite against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, just like Oakland, a lot of frequent flyer miles. They're coming off the bye from the trip from London. This is their 4th straight game away from home since September 22nd. And just like Oakland, 2 continents included and 1 West Coast trip. And their trip concludes next week when they got to go to Seattle. Now, this might actually be the better game to stay away from and just go against Tampa Bay next week. Because then, I mean, they got to go all the way back to Seattle before they come all the way. Maybe even go against Tampa Bay the next 2 weeks. With all that other traveling that they're going to have to do at the end of the trip. And I know Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill, and the crazy game, the way they beat the Chargers. There's nothing for me to really get excited about there. Plus Tennessee, just 1-2 straight up, 0-2-1 against the spread at home this year. So I just lean a little bit to Tennessee only because I think they're just a better team than Tampa Bay. That's it. And Tampa Bay is going through a lot of road stuff. But we always talk about it. I mean, Tennessee, it's like they're up, they're down, they win, they lose. So this is probably a loss. I get it.
Well, I'm going to be on Tampa Bay in this football game here, Greg, for a couple of reasons. Number one, the London, England factor. Number two, I think there's a huge coaching mismatch in here. Bruce Arians, a very experienced football coach, and also very experienced against the AFC South, from his days when he was an interim coach with the Colts and coached against that team in that very same division. The numbers bear that out. These 11-2 straight up with only 4-point spread losses against the AFC South in his career. 5-0 straight up into the money when taking on that opponent off a win. I think he's been a savior here for Jameis Winston, who I think would also be on the Jamarcus Russell unemployment line if it weren't for Bruce Arians, and he may end up still being there sooner than later, but I think he's keeping his career at least intact for the moment here. And I'm not a big Ryan Tannehill fan. We had him down here in Miami. Maybe a lot of that was he was Adam Gase, if you're reading what I'm saying. But the bottom line here to Ryan Tannehill is he came with a pretty good game in that first start, which we weren't surprised at doing. He put up 120 passer rating and doing just that. But look at him as a quarterback. against teams that are coming off a loss. He's just 14, 29, and 1 against the spread against hungry opponents here. I don't think Tannehill's got 2 good football games in a row in him, and I love Bruce Arians taking points in this situation here. I'll be on Tampa Bay.
All right, there is a major playbook trend the Bucks would have to go up against. Tennessee 12-5 straight up and against the spread all time versus NFC South teams, including 9-0 straight up, 8-1 against the spread versus losing teams from the NFC South. And Tennessee has already beaten Atlanta this season. Okay, let's talk about Philadelphia Buffalo. And this is a tough one to call. Bills are a 2-point favorite at home. Eagles are not playing well. They just look extremely dysfunctional right now on top of it. The Bills, meanwhile, are having a fantastic season. I mean, they've got 1 loss to the Patriots, and that game was almost a win. So you would just normally think, well, you got to go with Buffalo, right? And why are they only a 2-point favorite? And that's kind of the way that I'm thinking. But this is a very desperate Philadelphia team right now. The last time they were a desperate team, they went on the road. They beat the Packers in their biggest win of the season. They're desperate here. I'm kind of, again, another game I'm a little bit more conflicted about, but it seems to me that this is a game that you're not conflicted about. You really like the Eagles.
I do like the Eagles here for a couple of reasons. Number one, red-faced embarrassment off that loss against Dallas last Sunday night. Number two, a lot of people are going to knee-jerk and look to Buffalo because Philadelphia's playing their 3rd straight road game in a row. And if you did that, you'd be making a huge mistake just on that fact alone, because teams that are in this 3rd leg of a 3-game road trip have been very, very good to the spread when they're coming off a pair of losses in that particular road trek that they happen to be in. So I think that dispels a notion of what people perceive to be popular. Also, to me, you're looking at this game here, Philadelphia really responds well after being shut down their previous game. You look at their numbers here in the regular season when they're on the road after scoring 10 or less points, they're 12-1 straight up and 13-0 against the spread. So these are all good bounce back numbers for the Philadelphia Eagles here. And much like the New England Patriots, a lot of what Buffalo's done this season is come against really weak opposition here. Their opponents are just 6-25 on the season. And if you throw New England out of there, they beat just Sisters of the Poor here, obviously. I'm going to stay with Philadelphia here. I know they're a banged-up, battered-up football team. There's a lot of injuries on this team, but I think Doug Peterson digs down. He made a major, tragic mistake last week when he gave Dallas locker room material saying he's going to go down there and beat Dallas. You know, coaches reprimand players for saying things like that, okay? Coaches don't say things like that, and he had to end up eating his words for that. I think you're going to find a very silent, quiet Doug Peterson this week, and I think you're going to find a different result this week as well. I like Philadelphia over Buffalo.
Also just 2-6 against the spread their last 8 at home. Chargers, Bears. Bears favored by 4, just like last week. Last week was a disgrace. We talked about it. We have been talking about it, and Mitch Trubisky proved it again. He's just not very good, and I don't think that's going to change much. He's going to be another Mark Sanchez. That's all he's going to be. And the highlight of his career was going to be last year, and he's never going to see anything close to that again. So if he can buck that, then okay, good luck for him. But I've never been a big Mitch Trubisky guy from day one anyway. Look, Chargers got a ton of injuries. Now they got Melvin Gordon fumbling in the end zone to screw things up. Now they're talking about trading him before the deadline. There's just a lot of bad stuff going on with them. They're 1-5 straight up, 1-4-1 ATS last 6. It's just not looking good for the Chargers. For the Bears, yes, there was a bad loss last week, but they did lose to the Saints. That's one of the hottest teams in football. When I just look at it, I got to say, hey, who's a better football team? And the Bears are still a better football team. They still have a good defense. I just think the Chargers are in a big. I mean, the Chargers beat the Dolphins. That's all they've done since week 1 when they were able to escape an overtime win over the Colts. So I gotta go back and take the Bears in this one, and I just think it's more of a case that the Chargers are a mess right now.
Well, they're a mess, the Chargers are, but so too are the Bears right now. This is a team in total disarray, and I think it's a function of the expectations that were laid upon them after last season, the first year that they had under Matt Nagy, and they came so close to making it to the Super Bowl and didn't. And then they had to put their fortunes back on on the arm of Mitchell Trubisky. What happened last week was a tragic, tragic mistake, and you should never, ever see this again in the National Football League. And I'm going to put this squarely on Matt Nagy and not Mitch Trubisky. If you take a look at what happened in that contest last week, the Bears threw 54 passes and they ran the ball 7 times. Are you kidding me?
Football League.
It's unbelievable. National Football League, you run the ball 7 times and you put it up 54 times, and you think you're going to win a football game? So they got what they deserved in that sense. He's got to make a dramatic change. Matt Nagy is in this football game. Now you're catching the Chargers coming in here real hungry here, obviously. And if you take a look at what's going on in the National Football League this year, road dogs are cleaning up 44-24-1 to the spread, 18-4-1 in those games when they take on an opponent off a loss. That's the role that the Chargers will dress up against the Bears in this football game here. I think the Chargers need this game worse than the Bears do. I'm not a big Anthony Lynn fan. They're not going to win the game because of Lynn. It'll be more likely because of Phillip Rivers, but I do like the Chargers to upend the Bears this Sunday.
And a few games we are seeing eye to eye on. The Colts are a 6-point favorite against Denver. This might be my top pick of the week. They've won 4 out of 5. The one loss was to Oakland, kind of same point spread situation, but the Colts learned their lesson, so they're getting better every week. The Broncos had their moment with a couple of wins. They came back to reality, got thumped against the Chiefs. Colts, I'd be surprised if this was a 4-quarter football game.
I am with you too here, Greg. I don't have a lot of opinion on this particular football game. I do look for the Colts to come back to the pack here. They've really, I think, overplayed or overachieved this football season here. The Denver Broncos, I swore I was watching Joe Flacco playing in an old-timers game last week. It was absolutely pathetic watching him try and direct the football team. The mistakes he made were unmistakable. But the bottom line here is I don't think he can be as bad as he looked last week. And then the Colts are coming off that big win over Houston here. And also note that Denver's defense is really coming on right now. Last 3 games, they've held their last 3 opponents to season-low yards, all under 300 yards. The defense alone can get Denver the money in this game. The question is whether or not Joe Flacco can get them the win. But I think they're good enough to at least take the money.
Well, you had to figure that it was a little bit of a scheme change. Having Fangio come in there, he's a very good defensive coordinator. It's just a matter of time before Denver's defense started to play well, even though Chubb's out for the season. Imagine that, but that's kind of where I would see things. Cincinnati and the Rams, we both like the Rams in this spot, and why not? Even though it's a big spread, McVay is 5-1 against the spread when his teams are double-digit favorites, so I'm not worried about that. This is one of those London games, and we've seen a lot of blowout London games. I think we're going to see another blowout here. The only thing I'd be a little bit concerned with is McVay with his protege, Zach Taylor. He may not want to rub it in.
He may not, but then there's Bill Belichick and his proteges, and he doesn't seem to care. So we're going to find that out here real quick. But the bottom line here is if I'm the Queen of England, I'm asking the National Football League, what did we do to deserve this? They haven't had a marquee good game over there since the inception of the series, and here comes the Cincinnati Bengals, arguably the dregs of the National Football League this year. It may be the Miami Dolphins, but it could also be the Cincinnati Bengals in this contest here. And if you like teams that you think are going to win football games and probably cover the spread, you know who's going to win this football game. The question here is this number about double-digit underdogs that are away from home with a poor record, winless double-digit dogs away from home. How about 44-22 against the spread if they're 0-5 or worse? So those are good numbers for Cincinnati, and it usually means you're getting an abundance of points, usually an overlay in the football game. But I couldn't play Cincinnati with monopoly money this week. I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch this football game.
It is in London, so maybe that historical trend there, we can excuse it for the London game because it is a different situation being in London.
Yes, it is.
And Bengals are also a banged-up football team. there's a lot of key players that just aren't even healthy and playing. And then the Monday night game, we both like the Dolphins. I can't believe I'm saying that. But the Dolphins have covered their last 2 games. Matter of fact, they've come close to winning their last 2 football games, especially last week against the Bills. If Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't throw an interception, they could have gone up 2 scores late in the second half against the Bills. But that's the Dolphins. That's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Pittsburgh gets Mason Rudolph back, but Steven Tuitt goes on IR. They're coming off the bye after the big Charger win. Steelers are just 1-9 against the spread as a favorite of more than 10 points. I like the way Miami's been playing. Like I said, at least they're trying. I still don't think Pittsburgh has anything to write home about with the injuries, especially at quarterback. And it is on national TV, so who's ever playing for Miami, they got to have pride. 14's a lot to give up. I'll take the Dolphins in the 14.
I am too, Greg, and I think this line is the worst line I've seen in the National Football League this year. Those numbers you mentioned about Pittsburgh, was it 1-8? You said as a double-digit favorite.
1-9.
That was with 1-9. That was with the Killer Bees. Yeah. This is Pittsburgh bare naked, if you will. They're going to have a tough time just winning this football game. And now it's Mason Rudolph who comes back here. You know, they rallied around Hodges last week, the Duck. They rallied around him, okay? You know, that backup quarterback theory just keeps winning and winning. Well, you know, he's no longer there. Mason Rudolph is now their quarterback, like it or not. The bottom line, I don't think it's going to benefit this football team. But again, Miami fits the same MO that I just described to you about the Washington Redskins. That's 0-5 or worse, double-digit underdogs that are on the road. And if it's a non-division game, it's 30-10 against the spread. Those are some pretty good numbers for Miami. And also, one last thought on this game. We've seen this before from Ryan Fitzpatrick. He does this every year where he comes off the bench and he makes a mark and they start buzzing about Ryan Fitzpatrick. He maybe even win a player quarterback of the week award during the course of this time. But he'll eventually work his way back to the bench. But right now, Miami's enjoying it. They got a spark with Ryan Fitzpatrick. We saw it last week when they scored a season high in points and also yards last week. I think this is a real bad line in this football game here. I think Miami's playing with a little bit of confidence. You got to grab them plus the 14 or 14.5.
Who knows? Like you said, Ryan Fitzpatrick usually is due for at least a couple of games a year where nobody expects it, and he comes out, he throws for over 300 yards, he pulls off the upset. You don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot more crazier things than the Dolphins beating the Steelers on Monday night, let alone the point spread.
For sure. I mean, for sure, you've seen crazy things on Monday nights. And, you know, I can also tell you this, being down here in Miami, you know, with the tanking for Tua going on, supposedly, that's all management, okay? Right. There's not a player on this team that's tanking, okay? It's the players that the management is putting on the field. They're not NFL caliber type players. The players aren't looking to take a dive by any means at all. It's pride for them. So you're going to get a prideful effort, I think, out of Miami, at least this week, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, you know, whether or not they'll end up with that number 1 draft choice remains to be seen, but they're getting better. They had to get better from the way they started in the month of September, but they're getting better. And again, I say Ryan Fitzpatrick does give them that shot in the arm this week.
This year's draft, it could actually be one of those situations if everybody's thinking about Tua, where whoever winds up with, say, Justin Herbert, someone like that, could wind up with a better quarterback. Because I'm not sold on Tua at the NFL level, especially if he keeps getting hurt every year.
Well, he does have the makeup about being a little bit fragile, if you will. He gets hurt too often, far too often, and he's not physically overpowering, if you will. He's not built like Jalen Hurts.
It reminds me of Marcus Mariota. I was I remember there was talk about the Jets getting Mariota, and I was against it because I didn't think he'd last in the NFL, and it's exactly what we've seen. Not only talent-wise, but he's fragile. He gets hurt a lot.
You've got the other side of the equation here, which I don't think people even realize, is that he throws the ball left-handed. And you've heard many, many wide receivers in the National Football League saying it's totally different catching a pass from a left-hander than it is a right-hander. The ball's got a different spin on it, a different route getting there, and they have to make adjustments for that. So, you know, you've got that factor. You've got, you know, his physical skills, his physical makeup, that factor there as well. Justin Herbert, as you mentioned here, I mean, he's a statute. He's the prototype NFL football quarterback. So you never know,
Yeah.
who it's going to end up being. They might not be tanking for Tua in this football game. They may be going for Joe Burrow for all we know. Who knows what?
That's
But the
right.
bottom line
Good
here,
point.
the bottom line here is that right now Miami's playing with the cards they were dealt with, and I like their chances. I think they're going to come up. I'm going to go all in on the Dolphins on Monday
All
night.
right, and how's everything going on over at covers.com, Mark?
Everything's going real well there, you will, Greg. We got a lot of big games we're posting up this week. I'm doing a big college football game of the month this week. It's really a good-looking college football
Yes.
card. And I wrote a great article, another good article. I love doing statistics, and I do an article called Inside the Stats. And I'm going to run this one by you. I'm going to share this with the listeners out here. And if you can guess this answer, you will win a bar bet. Okay, and I'll buy you a drink. Okay, and I don't buy too many people drinks because I don't drink.
Okay.
Okay,
No,
all
neither do
right.
I, so we might have a problem there. But go ahead.
Well, there we go. Okay, but can you name the only team in the National Football League this year that has lost the yardage in every home game they've played, but won the yardage in every road game they've played?
Wow.
That's a pretty strong one, isn't
So
it?
a better road team than a home team is basically what you're saying.
Yes, because their performance on the road has been. I give them all check marks for their in the stats record, and all minuses when they're at home. Get out yarded
All right,
every
let me
game at
ask you
home.
just one clue, one hint. Is this
Yes,
a winning team or a losing team?
winning team, and they're at home this week.
Saints.
No, the Saints haven't been that bad at
Okay.
home. It's the Jacksonville
The
Jaguars, is who it is.
Jags.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And they're at home
Well,
this
good
week.
for me
So
since I'm a Jet fan.
there you go. Play that accordingly.
Yeah,
Okay.
with care, that's for sure, with the Jets. Okay. Anyway, Mark, I appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you again next week.
Hey, Greg, my pleasure as always. Enjoy the games. Be well. I look forward to catching you.